Have you ever been in a relationship where things seemed to be going fine until suddenly they weren't? One moment you're laughing together, maybe even talking about the future, and the next they're cold, distant, or completely withdrawn. No warning, no explanation, just silence. If you've experienced this, you've probably asked yourself the same painful question. What did I do wrong? I'm Jim Rohn, and today I want to talk to you about one of the most confusing and heartbreaking patterns in modern relationships, the avoidant collapse. Because the truth is, you may be doing something completely natural, loving deeply, showing vulnerability, trying to get closer, and without realizing it, you're triggering a complete emotional shutdown in someone who's wired to fear intimacy. This video will explain exactly why that happens. You'll learn how avoidantly attached people walk through life with a fragile Jenga tower of beliefs, fears, and coping mechanisms, and how one wrong move, often made with the best intentions, can make the entire structure collapse. But most importantly, I'll show you how to respond not with panic or self-blame, but with clarity, boundaries, and the emotional steadiness of someone who's securely attached. Because this isn't about fixing them. It's about understanding the psychology at play, protecting your peace, and deciding whether this is a relationship built on mutual growth or one that's asking you to abandon yourself to survive. So if you're tired of walking on eggshells, confused by hot and cold behavior, and ready to stop chasing and start choosing yourself, this video is for you. Stick around until the end. I'll walk you through what to do after the collapse, how to hold your ground with empathy, and how to rebuild from a place of strength, not desperation. And if you're someone who values emotionally intelligent insight on love, attachment, and personal growth, be sure to hit subscribe, tap the notification bell, and let's dive in. So let's break this down using something simple and powerful, the Jenga tower analogy. Imagine every avoidant person you've dated, or maybe the one you're dealing with right now, as a carefully built tower of Jenga blocks. Each block represents a belief, a fear, or a coping mechanism they've developed to feel emotionally safe. And I mean really safe. We're talking survival mode safe. Now, not all blocks are equal, and that's where things get interesting. Let's start with what I call the surface blocks. These are the ones you can actually see in action. Things like how they take forever to reply to texts, how they dodge emotional conversations, how they joke or change the subject when things get serious. Maybe they keep plans vague or say they don't like labels. Sound familiar? These are the behaviors that can be frustrating, but honestly, they're not the real problem. Removing or challenging these blocks causes the tower to wobble a little, but why? Because these behaviors are rehearsed. They've lived like this for years. They're normal. But here's where most people, especially those with anxious tendencies, start to tiptoe or overfunction. You try to fix, to adapt, to get closer without spooking them. You think, maybe if I'm more patient, maybe if I don't ask for too much. But as you get closer, you inevitably start poking at the next layer. These are the structural blocks. Now we're in deeper territory. These are invisible, internal rules they live by. Like, if someone sees the real me, they'll leave, or vulnerability equals weakness. These beliefs were likely shaped in childhood by inconsistent caregiving, emotional neglect, or moments where closeness brought pain, not safety. And when you get emotionally close, when you share your feelings, when you express love openly, they don't just see that as love, it registers in their nervous system as a threat. Let me give you a real-world example. Let's say you've been dating someone for a few months. You have a great weekend together, cuddling, opening up, laughing, sharing vulnerable stuff. On Sunday night, you tell them, "I really care about you." Monday morning, they go quiet. You don't hear from them for 2 days. You think, did I do something wrong? No. What happened is you touched a structural block. You got close enough to trigger their belief that if I let someone in, I'll lose control. They pull back not because of you, but because the tower is shaking. And then sometimes unintentionally, you hit the deepest level. These are the core wound blocks. This is where the collapse happens. These blocks aren't beliefs, they're identity. They're things like, if I lose my independence, I lose myself. Closeness equals suffocation. Love always ends in pain. And here's the kicker. You don't even have to say or do anything wrong to touch these. You might just be too consistent, too kind, too emotionally present. You represent a kind of intimacy that threatens their very sense of self. And when that happens, they collapse inward. They might ghost, pick a fight, end the relationship abruptly. You're left feeling blindsided, and they're left feeling like they had no choice. And I know what you're probably thinking. Why does this happen when I'm just trying to love them? That's the heartbreaking part. The closer you get, the more threatening love feels to someone who built their emotional tower on self-reliance, distance, and control. Not because you're unsafe, but because closeness feels unsafe to them. So here's what I want you to know. Their collapse is not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their wounds. All right, so now that we've broken down the structure of the avoidance emotional Jenga tower, let's talk about what actually triggers a collapse. Because this is where so many people get confused, hurt, and end up blaming themselves. Here's the part that's most surprising to people. Avoidant collapse usually isn't triggered by anything dramatic. It's not you yelling, crossing a boundary, or doing something obviously hurtful. More often, it's the soft, sincere moments of connection that trigger it. Yep, the very things that build closeness in a healthy relationship are the same things that feel threatening to someone with an avoidant attachment style. Let's say you've been dating someone for a while. You start opening up about your past, your dreams, maybe even your feelings for them. Nothing over the top, just honest, emotionally present conversation. You might say something simple like, "I really enjoy being around you," or "I feel safe with you." To you, that's intimacy, vulnerability, connection. But to an avoidant, that level of emotional closeness can hit right at the core of their deeply buried fears. It threatens the belief they live by. If I let someone in too far, I'll lose control, or worse, I'll lose myself. So what do? They withdraw, they go quiet, they cancel plans, they stop initiating. They may even pick a small fight out of nowhere, something about needing space or feeling overwhelmed. What's wild is that from your perspective, it feels like everything was fine. And that's because the collapse doesn't happen all at once. It's gradual. It creeps in silently, usually after a period of emotional high. That's why it feels so jarring. One weekend you're close, laughing, maybe even talking about the future. The next, they're gone, or emotionally unreal. Here's an example I hear all the time. You spend a wonderful weekend together. There's affection, comfort, even talk about upcoming plans. You go home feeling hopeful, maybe even safe. Then Monday hits and they don't text. Tuesday, still nothing. By Wednesday, you're spiraling, wondering if you said something wrong. So you reach out, trying to reconnect, but their replies are short, delayed, or non-existent. You didn't do anything wrong. You simply got too close, and that set off an internal alarm system they don't consciously understand. It feels like losing control to them, and control is what their emotional survival depends on. In some cases, they'll create distance quietly, and others they'll push you away intentionally through blame, conflict, or even ending the relationship. But whatever method they use, the goal is the same: to reestablish emotional distance so they can feel safe again. And here's what makes this hard for someone with an anxious attachment style. You feel the distance, and your natural response is to close the gap. You reach out, explain yourself, offer reassurance, or try harder to make it right. But the more you pursue, the more unsafe they feel, and the faster they retreat. So now, instead of pulling them closer, you're feeding the very dynamic that's pushing them away. What's the secure response? That's what we're going to talk about next, because it doesn't involve chasing, fixing, or proving your worth. It involves pausing, observing, and reclaiming your power. Stay with me. So what happens after the collapse? This is the part most people don't see. Because avoidants tend to go quiet. They don't usually come to you and say, hey, I shut down emotionally because I got scared. What they do is retreat, disappear, go radio silent, and behind the scenes, they start quietly rebuilding their emotional Jenga tower, one block at a time. Every block they put back in place is a coping mechanism, a layer of distance, a wall. It's their way of regaining control, of telling themselves, okay, I'm safe again, I'm alone, no one can hurt me. But here's the irony, and it's heartbreaking. Deep down, most avoidantly attached people don't want to be alone. They want closeness. They want connection, but they're terrified of the vulnerability it requires. What they're really hoping for, without even realizing it, is to find someone who can get close without knocking their tower over. Someone who can play Jenga gently. But the reality is that's nearly impossible, because the nature of emotional Jenga is that it gets shakier the closer you get. At some point, if you're being real and authentic, you'll touch a block that feels too risky to them. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because connection feels dangerous. When your wiring says closeness equals loss of self, and so they rebuild. Alone, you, meanwhile, are often stuck wondering, should I wait? Should I reach out? Will they come back? It's a painful place to be in. But it's also where your power lies. Because now you have a choice. You can either keep orbiting their emotional Jenga tower, or start building your own foundation. One that's rooted in clarity, self-respect, and emotional safety. Let's talk about how you do that without chasing, begging, or betraying your own needs. So, now we've hit the most important question. How do you respond in a secure way after the collapse? Here's the truth that hurts a little, but will set you free. It's not your job to rebuild their tower. Let me say that again, because so many people, especially those with anxious or healing attachment styles, struggle with this. You cannot fix someone's fear of closeness by loving them harder, texting them more, or walking on eggshells to avoid another collapse. That's emotional self-abandonment, and it never works long-term. Instead of trying to fix their tower, you focus on building something entirely different. What I call a shared tower. What does that mean? A shared tower is built with shared blocks: emotional safety, mutual values, trust, clear communication, and co-created meaning. It's not one person doing all the emotional heavy lifting, it's two people building something together at a pace that feels respectful to both nervous systems. Let me give you a real-life example. Let's say your avoidant partner pulls away after a few weeks of closeness. Instead of panicking or chasing, you take a secure step back. You send a calm, clear message like, hey, I've noticed some space between us lately. I care about you and I respect your need for space. When you're ready to talk, I'm open to it, but I also need a relationship where I feel safe and connected too. That's a shared block. You're not blaming, not begging, not withdrawing love, but you're also not overextending. You're letting them know, I'm willing to meet you, but I'm not going to abandon myself to do it. Now, here's where it gets interesting. If the avoidant collapses again, because let's be real, it can happen more than once, they'll start evaluating subconsciously what just fell apart. They'll think, were those emotional patterns all mine? Or were some of those new blocks the safe ones, the stable ones, shared? And if they see that the relationship was starting to shift towards something healthy, something built on shared effort, clear communication, and mutual emotional safety, that can change the way they respond to the collapse. Because for the first time they might realize, I can't rebuild this alone. This wasn't just my tower anymore. I need their help to rebuild something that actually lasts. Now, does this mean they'll come back and declare undying love overnight? Probably not. Growth takes time, but if real change is going to happen, it starts when they feel the emotional difference between isolation and shared emotional responsibility. And that only happens when you stay in your lane and build with self-respect. So remember, you're not here to manage someone else's fear. You're here to show up with emotional maturity, hold space without losing yourself, and co-create a relationship that feels safe for you too. That's secure attachment in action, and it's the only kind of love that really lasts. Let's keep going. I'll walk you through exactly what to do if you're still in the waiting phase, and how to stop overthinking of them while they figure themselves out. Common mistakes that anxious or insecure people often make after avoidant personalities retreat, because recognizing these mistakes can be a game changer. The first big one: filling the silence with over-communication. When an avoidant partner starts to pull back, many anxious partners go into connection survival mode. You might start texting more, asking if they're okay, over-explaining your feelings, or sending long messages to fix the vibe. You're not trying to be overwhelming. You're trying to bring back the emotional closeness that felt good just days before. But here's the catch. To the avoidant, it can feel like pressure. Remember, they're already overwhelmed by closeness. So the more you try to pull them back with words, the more they feel the need to escape. It becomes a cycle. You reach, they retreat. Second mistake: trying to fix the collapse. You might sense something's off, and your instinct is to make things better. Maybe you apologize for things you didn't actually do, or offer reassurance even though you're the one feeling hurt. You might think, if I just show them how safe I am, they'll come back. But again, this puts all the emotional responsibility on you, and it teaches them that you'll take care of their discomfort at your own expense. Lastly, a very common trap: misinterpreting withdrawal as personal rejection. This one stings, I know. When they pull away, it's easy to go into self-doubt. You start wondering what you said, what you could have done differently. But here's the truth: their withdrawal isn't always about you. Often it's about their internal conflict between wanting connection and fearing it. So instead of chasing or blaming yourself, pause. Let the silence breathe. Give yourself the gift of perspective. Is this really about my worth, or is it about their fear of closeness? That question alone can help shift you from anxious reaction to secure action. And that's where your power really is. Okay, let's take a look at what safe feedback actually looks like, and one of my favorite tools for the job is something called tactical empathy. This idea comes from Chris Voss, a former FBI hostage negotiator. Tactical empathy is not about agreeing with someone or letting them walk all over you. It's about understanding what's underneath their behavior and responding in a way that respects both their experience and your boundaries. In the case of an avoidant partner, their emotional language is usually space and silence. So when they start to pull away, the secure approach is to pull back too. Not to punish them, not to play games, but to match their energy in a calm, steady way. Here's an example. Let's say you notice they've gone quiet. You're tempted to check in 3 times in a row, to ask what's wrong, to fix the discomfort. Instead, tactical empathy sounds like this: hey, I've noticed you've been quiet. I get that you might need space, and I'm okay with giving that to you. I'll be here if and when you feel ready to connect. That message does 3 things. It shows awareness. You're not ignoring the shift. It respects their coping style. It sets a tone of emotional maturity. You're basically saying, I see you, I understand you, and I don't need to chase you to be okay. That kind of emotional fluency builds trust, because it shows them you're not here to invade or control. You're solid, grounded, and capable of giving space without making it personal. And ironically, that's often the very thing that makes them feel safe enough to come back. So here's the final takeaway I want you to hold on to. Every avoidant collapse is about their fear of intimacy, not your value. Let that sink in. Their distance, their silence, their emotional shutdown. It's not proof that you're too much, too needy, or not enough. It's evidence of their internal wiring. And trying to stabilize their emotional tower for them, that's not your job. And it never will be. Your real job, your secure role, is to build your own tower. A tower built on self-respect, emotional clarity, and honest communication. And when you meet someone who's willing to build with you, who can co-create something stable, meaningful, and shared, you'll feel it. It won't be confusing, it won't keep collapsing. It will feel calm, honest, and safe. But if the person you're with can't meet you there, if they keep collapsing, ghosting, or pulling away when closeness starts to grow, then your next move isn't to chase, fix, or shrink. It's to walk away with your integrity intact, not out of anger, not to prove a point, but because you finally understood. Staying in a relationship where you have to abandon yourself just to keep it alive, that's not love. That's survival. And you're not here to survive love. You're here to experience it, to co-create it with someone who values consistency, communication, and emotional safety as much as you do. So the next time someone collapses when you offer closeness, remember, that's not your cue to chase. That's your cue to choose yourself. And when you do, you open the door to a kind of connection that doesn't require you to lose your voice just to be heard. You deserve that kind of love, the kind that doesn't flinch when you show up whole. Let's bring everything we've talked about to a meaningful close. In this video, we unpacked one of the most confusing and emotionally draining patterns in relationships with avoidantly attached partners, the avoidant collapse. We explored how their internal world is like a fragile Jenga tower built from coping mechanisms, fear of intimacy, and identity-level wounds. We talked about how even small, loving gestures can accidentally destabilize that tower, not because there's something wrong with you, but because closeness feels unsafe to them. You learn that when an avoidant shuts down or disappears, it's not a rejection of your worth. It's a reflection of their emotional limits. And instead of trying to fix or rebuild their tower, your power comes from building your own. That means leading with self-respect, emotional clarity, and healthy boundaries. It means learning to recognize the difference between real connection and emotional survival. We also talked about tactical empathy, how matching their need for space with calm detachment isn't a game, it's emotional fluency. It's how you show you can hold space without losing yourself. And finally, we ended with this truth. You're not here to chase love. You're here to co-create it with someone capable of meeting you halfway. So thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing growth, clarity, and emotional maturity over chaos and confusion. If this video spoke to something real in your heart, I hope it gave you not just insight, but peace. If you found value in this content, please subscribe to the channel. I post weekly videos to help you navigate love, attachment, and emotional healing with strength and self-worth at the center. And I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever experienced an avoidant collapse? What helped you get through it? Or what are you still trying to figure out? You're not alone, and you don't have to walk this journey without support. Until next time, take care of your heart. You're worth that and more.